Little Ethan Miller bolted upright in bed, his piercing scream tearing through the stillness of the pre-dawn hour. The 7-year-old's small body shook uncontrollably as he clawed at his arms, his skin burning with an unbearable sensation, as if something were draining the life from him. His mother, Sarah, burst through the door just seconds later, fumbling for the light switch. When the harsh fluorescent light flickered on, she froze in the doorway, one hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my God!" she whispered, rushing to her son. Ethan's arms were covered in angry, red welts, some clustered in jagged lines, others standing alone as raised bumps. Fresh tears streamed down his flushed cheeks as he pointed to new marks forming on his neck and stomach. "They're biting me again, Mommy," he sobbed. "The monster's under my bed." Sarah yanked back the dinosaur-patterned sheets, expecting to see the telltale signs of bedbugs. But there was nothing, only clean fabric, and the raw terror in her son's wide, bloodshot eyes. Whatever had attacked Ethan had once again vanished without a trace. Each night, as darkness fell over the quiet Miller household, a terror unlike any other would silently creep into the small, modest bedroom of little Ethan Miller. The night air, cool and still outside his window, betrayed no hint of the horror that would soon unfold beneath its calm veneer. In the dead of night, Ethan's fragile sleep would shatter, replaced by anguished cries and the sound of a small body racked with pain. It began, as it always did, with Ethan abruptly awakening in a cold sweat, his wide, terrified eyes glistening with unshed tears. His small body, no more than 7 years old, was soon discovered to be covered in strange, red, burning bites. Each mark glowed like a rash of fresh embers against his pale skin, as if small flames had licked his flesh during the silent hours of the night. The pain was fierce and unyielding, and every time Ethan stirred awake, his cries of anguish pierced the stillness of the dark room. Across the hall, his mother, Laura Miller, heard the desperate wails that had become all too familiar. Rushing to his side, she found him curled up on his little bed, shaking as if in fear. Upon gently brushing the soft, short hair from his tear-streaked face, she noticed the clusters of red welts that reddened his arms, legs, and even his torso. Her heart sank with an indescribable mix of worry, sorrow, and disbelief. In the dim glow of the night light, Ethan whimpered softly, murmuring between hiccups, "There's a monster under my bed." His trembling voice, laden with terror, sent shivers down her spine. But when she bent down to inspect beneath the bed, she found nothing more than dust and forgotten toys. Desperate to find an explanation for the nightly torment, Laura combed through Ethan's room with an anxious energy. When she first suspected that bedbugs might be to blame, she began her meticulous search. Flooring, crevices of the wooden bed frame, the seams of his small pillow, all were examined under the unforgiving scrutiny of a flashlight. Yet no trace of the blood-sucking pests could be found. The room, for all its age and humid whispers from past summers, appeared impeccably clean. The absence of any evidence only deepened her dread, as though an unseen force was at work, a force that defied the logic of familiar nightmares like insect infestations. Throughout that long, painful night, with each agonizing cry from Ethan, Laura's mind raced. Had he imagined the bites, conjured up the idea of a monster under the bed as a byproduct of a frightful dream? Was it some inexplicable allergic reaction or even a figment of overactive imagination mingled with a child's nighttime phantasms? Yet, every morning as the day broke and Ethan's small body bore fresh, inexplicable bites, her heart filled with a silent agony and uncertainty. Her maternal instinct told her something was terribly wrong, a malignant mystery that defied ordinary explanations. As the week wore on, the pattern became unmistakable. Every night without fail, Ethan's anguished sobs echoed softly against the walls of their modest home. In those long hours before dawn, he would cry out for help, his pleas reverberating like a broken lullaby. And with every dawn, Laura found herself cradling him, trying desperately to soothe his pain and mend the tender fragments of his rapidly fragile spirit. In time, the frightened whispers of monster under the bed began to haunt his dreams and even his waking hours. as classmates at school started teasing him for talking about a phantom creature that tormented him at night. One particular night, after a day filled with hushed whispers among schoolmates and sympathetic looks from teachers, Laura resolved to install a night vision camera in Ethan's room, determined to document the cause of his strange affliction, and perhaps to ease her own mind. She hoped the footage would reveal a natural explanation. When she reviewed the grainy video the next morning, her blood ran cold. The recording showed Ethan, wide-eyed and disoriented, lying in bed as usual. There was no visible intruder, no evidence of bedbugs scuttling across the sheets, not even a shadow creeping along the wall. But then, in the corner of the screen, a place where, over the years, a tattered old teddy bear had been relegated to a forgotten shelf, something inexplicable occurred. For just an instant, the plush toy, a worn and faded bear that the family had kept despite repeated urges to discard it, seemed on the video to shift ever so slightly, as if it had come alive and inched its way closer toward Ethan's bed. Laura froze, replaying that brief frame over and over. At first, she dismissed it as a mere glitch of the low-light sensor, a random anomaly in the recording. But as she scrutinized the image, a glistening red outline of the bites on Ethan's tender skin juxtaposed against the eerie stillness of the room, the possibility began to haunt her. Was it possible that this quiet, unassuming teddy bear was not simply an obsolete toy, but something far more sinister? In the depths of her maternal desperation, every part of her instinct screamed to consider that perhaps the monster Ethan spoke of had been closer to home all along. The implications of that fleeting image sent tendrils of dread curling through her mind. How could a stuffed bear, inconspicuously resting on a shelf, suddenly acquire the semblance of movement? And why would it approach a sleeping child with such deliberate caution? Despite the logical reassurances of the technology, just a sensor glitch. Laura could not shake the growing conviction that the circumstances were anything but coincidental. Every unexplained cry, every burning red bite on Ethan's delicate skin, and that solitary frame of movement on the video began to weave a tapestry of chilling mystery. In the coming days, as Ethan's nightly torment continued, Laura would embark on a journey not just to diagnose a simple bug bite or allergic reaction, but to uncover a secret that tangled past grief, family mysteries, and an unnatural presence within the walls of their home. That first night of unending cries and inexplicable burns marked not only the beginning of a string of sleepless, tear-filled nights for Ethan, but also the onset of Laura's relentless quest for truth. For a mother, doubt and instinct often walk hand in hand. And as she looked into her son's glistening eyes, those eyes that spoke of unspeakable terror, she vowed that she would leave no stone unturned. In the silent hours of the night, when fear reigned and logic faltered, a single truth began to crystallize in her heart. Sometimes, the face of true horror is not monstrous in shape, but eerily ordinary. Hidden in the most innocuous of places, even in a teddy bear that no one dared to throw away. In the days that followed that first heart-wrenching night, the mystery surrounding Ethan's torment deepened into something even more unsettling. Laura took Ethan to visit his pediatrician, desperate for any explanation that could offer relief from the relentless, nightly assault marked by those fiery, red bites. The sterile exam room, with its cold linoleum floors and the quiet hum of fluorescent lights, became a theater for repeated examinations. Yet, each time the doctor examined Ethan's delicate skin, his expression remained one of growing perplexity. No signs of insects, infestations, or common allergies were found. The marks that bloomed every morning were undeniably real, fresh, and tormenting, but they defied all the usual explanations of bug bites or environmental irritants. The pediatrician, after more than one anxious inquiry and thorough physical examination, suggested a consultation with a pediatric allergist. Perhaps it could be an unusual allergic reaction, the doctor mused, his tone gentle yet laced with uncertainty. But even the allergist, with a battery of tests and prick screenings at his disposal, found nothing that corresponded to the peculiar pattern on Ethan's skin. With each passing consultation and ensuing round of medical tests, blood work, allergy panels, and even skin biopsies, the trail led nowhere. The mystery of Ethan's night terrors and inexplicable burns deepened, leaving both doctor and mother with more questions than answers. Night after night, Ethan's small body continued to bear the fresh, searing marks, as though an unseen assailant was methodically attacking him while he slept. The wounds appeared with exacting precision, in clusters along his limbs and torso, as if arranged by an invisible hand that neither time nor space could explain. Even more baffling was the fact that these attacks occurred silently. When Laura reviewed the night vision footage she had taken, with the help of the camera she installed after that first unsettling observation, she noted that while there was no sign of any intruder creeping through the room, the video inexplicably showed the worn, old teddy bear in a corner slowly shifting its position toward Ethan's bed. She rationalized it away as a mere glitch in the camera's sensor, but deep inside, she couldn't help feeling that there was something horribly out of place. At school, the situation took on a new and painful dimension. Classmates, ever vigilant in their penchant for gossip and teasing, began to notice the mysterious red welts on Ethan's exposed arms and legs. What started as a few whispered questions soon escalated into overt teasing. In the bustling corridors of his elementary school, Ethan found himself the target of cruel remarks. Labels like bug boy and itchy freak floated around in the laughter of children who had no idea of the terror he experienced beneath the veil of night. Their teasing not only deepened his already fragile self-esteem but also magnified the isolation he felt, as if the darkness of his bedroom had seeped into every facet of his young life. Laura, for her part, oscillated between desperation and disbelief. Each night, she would hold Ethan tightly, soothing him with gentle words as she tried to piece together fragments of a puzzle that refused to reveal its truth. She scoured every corner of their tidy home, recleaning every surface and examining every potential hiding place for signs of infestation. Yet, despite her relentless efforts, no evidence of bedbugs, or any other kind of nocturnal pest, was ever found. The absence of any tangible clue only deepened her horror, the dread that something unseen, something not of this world or of simple biology, was siphoning the peace from her son's nights. Meanwhile, as the cycle of unexplained injuries persisted, the medical community offered little solace. One after another, doctors and specialists shook their heads in solemn regret, explaining that sometimes children exhibit bizarre skin reactions that defy conventional explanations, a phrase that rang hollow in the face of Ethan's growing agony. Each visit left Laura feeling more isolated and desperate. The glimmers of hope offered by laboratory tests faded into long, sleepless nights of frantic research and tearful conversations with other distressed parents, none of whom seemed to hold the answers to a problem that struck so close to her soul. In whispered conversations with other parents, some speculated whether Ethan's condition was purely psychosomatic, a manifestation of stress, perhaps influenced by his own vivid nightmares. One teacher, attempting to offer comfort, gently suggested that maybe the boy's relentless fear was causing his body to react in mysterious ways. But these theories did little to ease the mounting guilt and anguish that gnawed at Laura's heart. After all, if it were all in his head, why were the wounds so real? Why did the night vision footage reveal that inexplicable movement of the teddy bear? And why did the burning red marks reappear with a precise regularity that defied the randomness of a child's nightmares? Within the sterile gloom of the hospital and the muted chatter of school hallways, the invisible hands of these unanswered questions grasped tighter around the Millers' lives. Day by day, as Ethan's nightly ordeal continued unabated, his small frame became marked not just by unrelenting injuries, but by the scars of social exclusion and whispered taunts. Each new set of bites not only worsened his physical pain but also left an indelible mark on his tender spirit. The untraceable attacker remained at large, a phantom force attacking in the dead of night, leaving behind a trail of red, burning injustices that no one could explain or even begin to understand. And so the mystery deepened. Ethan's condition, an enigma wrapped in pain, became a silent testament to a secret that perhaps went far beyond the realm of an ordinary allergic reaction. In the interplay of fear, skepticism, and unyielding maternal love, the stage was set for an investigation that would finally unravel a truth so bizarre it defied the conventional limits of science and the human mind. With every unanswered question, Laura's determination to unearth the cause only strengthened, even as she battled the crushing despair of watching her only child suffer each night. The untraceable attacker, elusive and camouflaged in the most mundane of objects, was not going to surrender its secrets without a fight. Laura Miller's grief had not dimmed with the passing days. Instead, it had hardened into a steely resolve. Each night, as Ethan's anguished screams echoed through the still corridors of their modest home, her maternal instincts screamed for answers. With the doctors and allergists having failed to explain the burning, red bite marks that invaded her son's fragile skin every time he slept, Laura knew that the truth lay hidden in the shadows of the inexplicable. There had to be another way, another explanation beyond allergies or imagined terrors. Determined not to let despair claim their lives, Laura began to search for alternatives beyond the sterile confines of hospital rooms and laboratories. In whispered conversations with a few neighbors and at community meetings, she learned of an amateur entomologist named Dr. Samuel Reed, a retired biologist with an insatiable curiosity for strange infestations and an eye for the minuscule details that others often overlooked. While conventional wisdom seemed to favor a diagnosis of allergy or psychosomatic reaction, Laura's gut, that unerring maternal detector, insisted that something far more sinister was at play. Late one rainy afternoon, after another sleepless night of tear-streaked worry and frantic pacing, Laura dialed Dr. Reed's number. His warm, gravelly voice on the other end of the line conveyed a mixture of compassion and determination. "I've heard about your son, Laura," he said gently, "and though I am not part of any official medical body, I believe I can help. Sometimes the smallest clue, something overlooked by all the standard tests, can unravel a mystery." With his reassurance, a fragile hope began to stir within her heart. That same evening, as the patter of rain drummed against the windowpane, Dr. Reed arrived at the Miller home. Clad in a well-worn jacket and carrying a modest leather case filled with an assortment of hand tools, sample containers, and a portable magnifier, he immediately set to work. Laura led him upstairs to Ethan's room, a small space now haunted by nightly terror, where the child's bed lay uncomfortably close to a tattered shelf that held neglected mementos of the past. There, on a dusty chair against the wall, sat the infamous old teddy bear. For years, it had been a sentimental relic, a plush companion left over from happier times, its once bright fur muted by age and secret neglect. Dr. Reed's presence brought a new energy into the room. Methodically, he began his investigation. He first examined the neatly made bed, scrutinizing the sheets, duvet, and stuffed animals with a practiced and forensic eye. Every corner of the bedding was inspected for traces of parasites, foreign particles, or signs of insect infestation. However, as expected from previous examinations, nothing overtly abnormal was found. The air still carried a faint scent of detergent and fresh linen, a testament to Laura's persistent cleaning efforts. Yet, as he moved his investigation to the row of neglected toys, his gaze fell upon the plush bear that seemed as out of place as the silence that had settled over Ethan's nights. Crouching beside the bear, Dr. Reed gently lifted it from its perch. Its faded button eyes and well-worn fabric, once symbols of comfort, now exuded an eerie familiarity. Running his fingers along its surface, he noted with furrowed brows that one of the seams, a thin, almost indiscernible thread along the bear's shoulder, was unevenly frayed, as though it had been tampered with or subjected to stress. Slowly and deliberately, he eased open a hidden seam along the inner lining of the bear. What he discovered inside was as astonishing as it was chilling. Nestled within the soft, musty confines of the bear's inner cavity, Dr. Reed found a small, concealed pocket that housed an unexpected accumulation of organic residue. It was as though a microscopic ecosystem had taken root over the years. A cluster of mold, dust mites, and what appeared to be fungal spores intermingled with stray fibers. Using his portable magnifier, he examined the area closely. The clusters bore unusual pigmentation and texture that seemed inconsistent with normal hide-and-seek debris typical of an old toy. His heart pounded in intellectual excitement as he carefully scooped out a minute sample for further analysis, whispering, "This is no ordinary accumulation. It appears to be a thriving microcolony, perhaps a kind of parasitic organism." Laura, though anxious, watched silently as Dr. Reed continued his careful dissection of the bear's secret compartment. The realization struck her. Could this hidden growth be interacting with Ethan's skin, triggering a rare and violent reaction? Every night, as her son's body suffered red, burning bites, the secretive organic matter, likely dormant for years, when the bear was nothing more than a family heirloom, had seemingly become active. Dr. Reed explained that certain types of microparasites, under specific conditions, can produce enzymes or toxins. In a sensitive individual, such as Ethan, especially if he harbored a unique genetic predisposition, exposure could elicit an extreme inflammatory response. A reaction so potent it might result in the vivid, almost searing marks that now marred his little body. As the gravity of the discovery sank in, Laura's mind raced back to the many painful nights spent consoling Ethan. The memory of his nightly cries and desperate whispers of a monster under the bed took on a new, tragic significance. In that moment, Dr. Reed's discovery transformed the intractable mystery from an inexplicable series of wounds into a tangible, biological phenomenon. A mystery with roots tangled deeply in both the family's painful past and the obscure legacy of a discarded teddy bear. Dr. Reed's voice, low and measured, broke the silence. I believe we have uncovered a plausible cause for Ethan's symptoms. This microorganism in the bear's interior is releasing a substance that interacts with a unique element in his physiology. It might explain why all the conventional tests have come up empty. His words, though laced with scientific caution, were a beacon of hope for Laura. For the first time since the nightmare began, there was a glimmer of an answer, one that united both the tangible and the psychological. In the ensuing hours, as Dr. Reed carefully documented his findings and collected samples for further analysis, Laura felt the crushing weight of despair begin to lift, replaced by a cautious optimism. Though no one could yet fully comprehend the twisted interplay between the bear's hidden parasitic chamber and Ethan's immune response, the fact that something could finally be pinpointed provided a fragile thread of hope. Laura knew the journey was far from over. The road ahead promised more investigations and difficult decisions, but she had regained a measure of control. A mother's intuition had driven her to seek help, and help had come, even if it arrived in the form of an eccentric entomologist and a secret hidden within a long-forgotten toy. Dr. Reed's careful examination of the old teddy bear had already raised more questions than answers. After gently prying open the unevenly stitched seam along the bear's shoulder, he had uncovered a hidden pocket tucked deep within the plush lining. Now, in this very moment, his eyes widened as he peered inside the concealed cavity, where what he discovered defied the expectations of an ordinary childhood relic. Inside the darkened chamber of fabric, a small microcosm of decay and mystery had been allowed to flourish over years of neglect. Clusters of organic residue, laced with gossamer threads of mold and cigarette ash from forgotten memories, had accumulated in a way that made it appear almost like a miniature ecosystem. Dr. Reed's portable magnifier revealed a network of fine, interwoven mycelial threads, fungal spores, and what might have been stray motile organisms, tiny parasites that had apparently taken shelter in the plush material. The sight was astonishing not only because it contradicted the bear's innocent exterior but also because the organic mass exuded a faint, acidic odor that hinted at virulent biological activity. He carefully extracted a small sample using sterilized tweezers, placing it into a sealed vial for further analysis. The clumps of fungal matter were dark and uneven, interspersed with blinking clusters of what might have been bacterial colonies or microinvertebrates. In the dim light of Ethan's room, the specimen looked almost otherworldly, a parasitic nest thriving within an object that had once symbolized comfort. Even as he worked, Dr. Reed's scientific mind raced through hypotheses. Could this unanticipated microecosystem be responsible for releasing toxins? Might it harbor allergenic compounds or enzymes that, when mixed with moisture and the unique chemistry of Ethan's skin, triggered such violent inflammatory responses? Laura stood close by, tears threatening to spill as she observed the grim, almost surreal scene unfolding before her eyes. The teddy bear, once a cherished symbol of childhood solace, had become the unlikely culprit behind her son's unhallowed nightly torment. For years, she had clung to the notion that perhaps her persistent cleaning, her desperate attempts to rid their home of unseen pests, would rescue Ethan from the mysterious bites. Now, in the soft glow of a flickering bedside lamp and under the scrutinizing gaze of an empathetic entomologist, the hidden truth was unspooling like a nightmare in slow motion. Dr. Reed began to explain, in a low, thoughtful tone, what he had observed. This isn't simply dust or the remnants of old stuffing. It's a complex colony, he said, his voice wavering between scientific detachment and a deep emotional undercurrent. These fungal spores and microbial consortia are not common. Their development suggests a sustained environment, one that might have been nurtured by a combination of moisture, warmth, and repeated contact. I suspect that the bear, having been preserved as a keepsake over many years, provided the perfect incubator for this hidden growth to take hold. He paused, carefully placing the vial on the bedside table next to a small digital sensor. What's even more fascinating and alarming is that the enzymes or toxins released by these microorganisms could be reacting with the unique composition of Ethan's skin. There might be a genetic mutation or specific sensitivity in him that triggers an unusually severe immune reaction. Essentially, the bear might be releasing an allergenic or toxic compound in very tiny amounts that, when absorbed through his skin, results in these burning, red welts. Laura listened, her heart pounding as she tried to reconcile the scientific explanation with the kicks of despair and guilt that had haunted her since the onset of these mysterious attacks. Her mind drifted to long-forgotten memories of her first son, whose tragic and enigmatic death had been shrouded in silence and unspoken sorrow for years. A secret that, until now, had been carefully hidden away. The teddy bear itself had once belonged to that lost child, a symbolic relic that her late husband had refused to let go of, hoping against hope that he might still be with them in some form. Could this forgotten toy, preserved as a token of grief and loyalty, have become the unintentional vessel for a parasitic threat? Dr. Reed's explanation deepened the layers of the mystery. He ran a gloved finger gently along the edge of the torn fabric, squinting at the unusual accumulation of organic matter. I must admit, he continued, that such a reaction, this level of skin inflammation in a child, has never been documented in the literature to my knowledge. But here we may be witnessing a rare bioallergic interaction. Under normal circumstances, the toxins from such a colony might not cause harm. However, in Ethan's case, if there is a genetic predisposition, perhaps a mutation inherited or developed after his first sibling's disappearance, the body might react with an exaggerated immune response. As he spoke, his voice revealed both the marvel and the horror of the discovery. He carefully collected several more samples from the bear's interior and made notes on the unusual coloration and texture of the material. The substance had a distinctly gelatinous consistency in parts, intermingled with gritty fragments that resembled decaying plant matter. It was as though the bear had resumed the secrets of a long-lost natural experiment, a microhabitat that had been allowed to persist in secret, sheltered by nostalgia and the weight of an unresolved past. Laura's silence was palpable as she processed this turbulent mixture of scientific insight and personal tragedy. Every moment in that room seemed to stretch into eternity. The teddy bear, a silent sentinel of memories and lost love, now bore the mark of a sinister twist of fate. In a maddening blend of terror and acceptance, she realized that the unexplained burns on Ethan's skin were not the result of any simple insect or allergic reaction. Rather, they were a manifestation of a hidden bioallergic nightmare, one that had been incubating inside a toy once filled with innocence and now tainted by time, neglect, and a tragic family secret. In that tense and hushed atmosphere, Dr. Reed promised to run further tests on the samples. The preliminary findings might pave the way to a targeted treatment that could neutralize the toxic reaction. If his hypothesis held true, it would mean that by deactivating this parasitic growth or blocking its interaction with Ethan's unique skin chemistry, they might finally be able to save the child from his nightly torment. The gravity of the discovery sank in like a stone. The bear, long relegated to the margins of the family's past, had unwittingly become the pivot upon which the future and healing might turn. For Laura, the tumult of guilt, sorrow, and fear slowly began to give way to a cautious hope. A hope that, perhaps, by confronting the relic of a painful history, she could finally close a terrible chapter of the family's story. And in that moment, the unassuming teddy bear, its secret now piercing the veil of silence, stood as both a warning and a key to understanding the dark, complex interplay between past traumas and present afflictions. That evening, after Dr. Reed had finished his preliminary analysis and carefully documented every detail of the teddy bear's hidden microecosystem, Laura sat alone at the kitchen table, staring blankly at the half-empty cup of tea that had long since gone cold. The weight of the discovery pressed upon her heart like a buried secret desperate to resurface. Unable to keep the truth hidden any longer, she reached for the old family album and a stack of yellowed newspaper clippings stored in a battered box in the attic. A collection of memories that, until now, had been carefully compartmentalized away from the present. As the soft hum of the overhead light filled the small kitchen, Laura began piecing together fragments of a past that she had long struggled to conceal. With trembling fingers, she turned the delicate pages of the album until she found a faded photograph. A smiling young boy in a worn, cozy sweater, his arm draped lovingly around a small, cherished teddy bear. The photograph bore the unmistakable aura of a bygone time, a period when hope and innocence still reigned despite the harsh realities of their world. That boy was her eldest son, David, taken from her life far too soon. He had died at the same tender age that Ethan now was, a fact that was never openly discussed within the family, shrouded in layers of unspoken grief and unresolved guilt. Unable to bear the silence any longer, Laura knew it was time to confront the past that had haunted her for decades. In a hesitant, quavering voice, she called her estranged husband Michael, a man who had kept his own sorrow tightly locked away. When he answered the phone that cool, somber night, she could barely get the words out. "Michael, there's something about that old bear. I think it belonged to David." The pause on the line was long and heavy with years of unspoken sorrow. Eventually, Michael's voice emerged, brittle yet reflective. "I always kept it," he admitted slowly, a confession laced with regret. After he died, I couldn't bear to let go. I thought that if I held on to something that reminded me of him, maybe I would find a way to keep him alive in my heart." His words, unadorned and raw with pain, sent shivers down Laura's spine. In the dim light of the night, Laura recounted every detail of the mysterious burns, of Ethan's nightly terror, and, most shockingly, of the inexplicable movement caught on the night vision camera. Michael's silence on the other end of the line grew heavy, and then he whispered, "I always suspected there was something more to that bear. I kept it hidden away, even when we brought it out on special occasions, never thinking it might do harm. I didn't dare speak of it. Not after David." His confession reverberated with the weight of guilt and a sorrow that had been locked away in his own broken heart. They talked long into the night, both of them piecing together the gravity of what had been concealed for so many years. Michael confessed that the bear had been David's constant companion, a silent testament to both his joy and his quiet despair. After David's sudden, inexplicable death, he had clung to the bear as if it was the last tangible remnant of the child he had lost. Their shared silence had been filled with painful memories. The unexplained fever that fateful day, the hospital room's sterile, echoing quiet, and the unspoken understanding that some mysteries were better left buried. But now, confronted with Ethan's unexplained suffering, that long-suppressed secret began to take on new significance. Laura's voice wavered as she asked, "Do you think this bear might be connected to what's happening to Ethan?" Michael's response was a fragile, introspective murmur. "I don't know. I always believed it was just our grief, our inability to let go. But perhaps David's presence, his memory, or something left behind in that bear somehow triggered something in Ethan's fragile system." As they spoke, the conversation grew into a raw confrontation with the past, a painful, cathartic exploration of the guilt that had kept them apart for years. They recalled hushed arguments, moments of silence at family gatherings, and the shared sorrow that had never been openly discussed. Michael admitted that his reluctance to let the bear go was not merely sentimentality, but a deep-rooted inability to forgive himself for the things he had failed to do for David. The realization that the very object they had both so desperately protected might now be contributing to Ethan's suffering was almost too much to bear. Yet, in that vulnerable dialogue, hope also flickered. A hope that by confronting the past, by acknowledging the buried pain and secrets, they might finally unlock a solution that could spare Ethan the torment they had feared for so long. In the quiet aftermath of their conversation, Laura and Michael resolved that the truth would no longer be hidden in shadows. They agreed to bring the bear to Dr. Reed for further testing and to explore potential treatments that might counteract whatever allergenic or toxic agent it was releasing. They also made a pact, between themselves and with Ethan, that the painful chapter of David's untimely death would no longer dictate the fate of their living child. Perhaps, by facing the ghosts of the past, they could begin to heal both the old wounds and the new afflictions that now linked the memories of a lost son to the suffering of their youngest. That night, as the storm outside raged and the clock ticked slowly forward into the early hours, a fragile unity was forged, a determined effort to reconcile the past with the present, to purge the silent horror that had haunted their home, and to ensure that the legacy of grief would no longer define their family's future. In the days that followed the emotional confrontation about the bear's dark legacy, Dr. Reed worked feverishly in his modest laboratory, a converted garage at the local community college, to uncover the precise nature of the mysterious substance hidden deep within the plush toy. Under the harsh glare of fluorescent lights, he re-examined the samples he had collected from the bear's secret compartment. Using advanced microscopy and biochemical assays, his work took on an almost frenetic urgency. Every slide he prepared, every spectrum he analyzed, was a piece of the puzzle that might explain the nightly agony of young Ethan Miller. Dr. Reed confirmed his initial observations with stunning clarity. The dark, gelatinous material was not a simple accumulation of dust or spilt fibers. It was a thriving microcolony composed primarily of a rare species of fungus, one that, until now, had rarely been described in medical literature. The fungal organism produced a unique enzyme complex and secreted a small molecule toxin. These compounds, which Dr. Reed tentatively labeled mycotoxins X, exhibited properties that could severely irritate human skin upon even minimal exposure. What was even more extraordinary, however, was the revelation that these toxins alone might not be sufficient to cause the violent allergic reactions seen in Ethan. Instead, Dr. Reed began to suspect that Ethan's uninterrupted cascade of burning welts was the result of a very rare genetic predisposition, a bioallergic reaction so uncommon that it had escaped detection by conventional medical screenings. To test this groundbreaking hypothesis, Dr. Reed coordinated with a biochemistry research team at a nearby university. Together, they collected a fresh blood sample from Ethan and began a series of in vitro experiments. Under controlled conditions, they exposed cultured human cells carrying a normal genetic profile to minute concentrations of the extracted toxin. The results were mild, no dramatic reaction occurred. Next, they exposed the same toxin to cultured cells derived from Ethan's blood sample, after isolating his peripheral blood mononuclear cells. Almost immediately, the team observed a hyperreactive response. Cells released cytokines at levels several times higher than their normal counterparts, and a cascade of inflammatory markers set off alarm bells across multiple assays. Microscopic imaging of Ethan's cells revealed that they were responding abnormally to the toxin's molecular structure. DNA sequencing of the affected cells soon uncovered a point mutation in a gene critical for regulating inflammatory responses, one that had not been previously associated with hypersensitivity reactions. This mutation, which Dr. Reed and his colleagues described as genetically rare, appeared to alter the receptor site of a key protein in the immune pathway. As a consequence, even the minuscule amount of toxin, passively leaching out from the fungal microcolony in the teddy bear, set off an excessive immune reaction, manifesting as the painful, fiery red welts that marred Ethan's skin every morning. The scientific team was both astonished and deeply moved by the clarity of the data. Dr. Reed meticulously documented all findings in a lengthy report, complete with detailed photographs of micrographs, graphs of cytokine levels, and genomic sequences highlighting the mutation. He proposed that this rare bioallergic reaction explained the unexplained pattern of burns. The convergence of environmental and genetic factors was undeniable. The bear's covert parasitic growth had been silently releasing its toxins night after night, and Ethan's sensitive physiology had transformed these exposures into a torment of red, burning bites. As the report circulated among pediatric specialists, dermatologists, immunologists, and allergists, the once impenetrable mystery began to yield to scientific consensus. The discovery not only confirmed that the bear was the inadvertent source of the toxin, but it also established that a hidden genetic mutation was the missing link in the chain of cause and effect. In many ways, the case of little Ethan Miller would become a landmark study, a cautionary tale of how a family's unspoken past intersected with modern biology in a way no one could have ever imagined. For Laura, the unveiling of this scientific truth was bittersweet. On one hand, it provided a tangible explanation, rooted in both environmental hazard and genetic predisposition, for the relentless suffering of her son. On the other hand, it confirmed long-held suspicions that the seemingly benign keepsake, the old teddy bear from her first marriage, had been a silent harbinger of trauma ever since the loss of her first son, David. This revelation, as harrowing as it was, opened the door to potential treatments. With Dr. Reed's findings in hand, local doctors began working on a therapeutic regimen designed to block the specific inflammatory pathway activated in Ethan. They also advised the family to dispose of the bear, a difficult, emotionally laden decision, as it was a relic of both love and guilt. In the sterile calm of the lab, surrounded by evidence and the hum of scientific equipment, Dr. Reed offered a final measured thought. Sometimes, the truth is hidden in the most unlikely places. This isn't a tale of supernatural forces as much as it is a haunting convergence of biology, genetics, and a tragic family past. By understanding the root of the problem, we're not only helping little Ethan, we're also learning how to protect others who might share a similar, rare vulnerability. His words were a beacon of rational hope, promising that with enough understanding, even the most inexplicable mysteries could be rendered into clear, actionable insight. In the weeks that followed Dr. Reed's definitive report and the subsequent cessation of Ethan's nightly torment, a slow, tentative healing began to permeate the Miller household. The storm of uncertainty and inexplicable suffering, which had so long drawn dark shadows over every corner of their lives, was finally showing signs of receding. With the confirmation that Ethan's intense reactions were triggered by a rare toxin emanating from the concealed microecosystem within the old teddy bear, and armed with a targeted treatment designed to block that hyperreactive immune response, the family found the courage to confront the relic of their past that had silently wreaked havoc on their present. On a crisp autumn morning, with sunlight filtering in through the kitchen window in gentle golden streams, Laura and Michael made the decision that had haunted their hearts for years. It was time to say goodbye to the bear. The faded plush toy, with its matted fur and uneven stitches, had once served as a bittersweet memento of their first son, David. A secret whispered only between them, coated in a guilt too heavy to bear. The bear had been a repository of memories, a living talisman of loss and unspoken grief. Now it had become the unwitting catalyst for Ethan's suffering. In a poignant ceremony held in the quiet backyard, the entire family gathered around a small wooden table decorated simply with wildflowers and a single candle. Dr. Reed, who had become a trusted friend through his relentless search for truth, offered a few comforting words about releasing objects that no longer served. One by one, each family member shared a memory. Tears emerged as Michael recalled David's laughter, and Laura admitted that holding onto the bear had, in its own way, been her attempt to keep him alive. Yet, as painful as the memories were, releasing the bear symbolized more than just the letting go of an object. It meant the willingness to break the cycle of inherited trauma and to open a space for healing in its stead. After the heartfelt rituals, the bear was donated to a local historical society that specialized in preserving relics of the past with compassion and context. No one in the family wanted to see it again, for to them it was a reminder of remorse and of unspoken secrets. With its departure, a strange emptiness took root in the house, but that void was soon balanced by the glimmer of hope that had begun to sprout in the hearts of its inhabitants. That very night, for the first time in 8 long, excruciating weeks, Ethan slept without the oppressive fear that had once clawed at him in the dark. In the silence of his own small room, a room whose every corner had once vibrated with the terror of unseen attacks, There was only the sound of steady breathing and the gentle rustling of curtains in the cool night breeze. The hum of nighttime insects and distant calls of birds provided a quiet symphony that, instead of inciting fear, now nurtured the possibility of peaceful sleep. When morning light crept across his small bed, Ethan awoke with a newfound calm. There was no searing pain, no fiery welts blooming across his skin as had been his nightly curse. His eyes, though still puffy from long nights of tears, held a quiet wonder and relief. Sitting up with a soft groan, he scanned his room, now devoid of any sinister presence, and, in a voice both innocent and profound, he uttered, "The monster is gone. But now I know that I had a brother." Those few words, simple, direct, and heavy with meaning, unleashed a cascade of confessions among the family. Laura's heart pounded with both sorrow and bittersweet relief as she realized that Ethan's innocent statement carried a deep understanding of the intricate ties between the past and present. The revelation that Ethan was subconsciously linking his strange affliction to the memory of his late brother, whose existence had been obscured by adult silence and unbearable guilt, resonated deeply. For Ethan, the realization of having once had a brother was both startling and healing. A connection forged not through the physical presence of another, but through the quiet echo of loss and the possibility of closure. In the days and months that followed, the Miller family embarked on a journey of reconciliation with their past. With the bear gone and treatment underway to temper Ethan's genetic hyperreactivity, the nightmares gradually ceased. Medical experts noted improvements in Ethan's condition, and his once frequent visits to the hospital began to dwindle. At school, the teasing subsided, replaced by a cautious curiosity and then by empathy once his story became known. The community, too, rallied around the family, offering acts of kindness and support that helped fill the void left by years of silent grief. The Miller household slowly transformed from a house of lingering shadows to a home of tentative light. Family dinners were no longer overshadowed by hushed silences about old tragedies. Instead, they became opportunities for open, honest conversations about the past and hopes for a future defined by healing rather than hidden sorrow. Laura and Michael now set aside moments each evening, quiet, reflective times where they remembered David not as a ghost that tormented them, but as a brother whose memory could guide Ethan toward resilience. And on that serene night, with the memory of the bear receding like the final strains of a heartbreaking melody, a gentle peace settled over them all. In that calm, in the deep silence where old fears had once held sway, the Miller family experienced a renewal of hope. For Ethan, the declaration "the monster is gone" was not a denial of past terrors, but an affirmation that his body, and his heart, had overcome a legacy of grief. Now, armed with the truth of his own genetic makeup and the bittersweet understanding of family loss, he could look forward to life with a new perspective. The courage to accept that sometimes healing is born from the unearthing of buried secrets. This story shows, sometimes fear is not imagined. It simply wears a different face. Subscribe if you believe that a mother's instinct is the best detective, and that facing the past can illuminate the path to healing.